Hello everyone and welcome to another video. In the previous video, we looked at the analog way of making a crown or a bridge. In this section, we're going to look at the digital workflow. Now, before we get into that, let's look at what are some of the problems that we encounter when we're doing the analog method. Now, we're going to break it down into patient factors and lab factors. So when you look at the patient factors, it involves selection of the proper tray size, correct mixing of the material, whichever material you're using, incorporating it into the tray, taking an impression. Sometimes patients can be awkward about taking impressions, they gag a lot. Then once you've got the impression, you have to look at it and see if it's got any air bubbles, if it's got any drags. And once you're satisfied with the impression, you have to transport it in a timely manner to the lab. That brings us to the lab factors. Once the lab has the correct impression, then they've got to pour stone into it. So they need to mix the stone, correct water powder ratio, good mixing technique, bubble free, and then pour it into the model. Once it's set, then you pour a base onto it, put the pins in there, cut the pins, ditch the models. So there's quite a lot of steps involved. It involves time, effort, money, cost, and prone to errors. That's the most important thing. So to minimize all those, here's what we can use. Yes, a scanner. So in this section, we're going to look at what goes on between actually scanning a patient and actually producing the dental prosthesis. Now, the scanner helps us to directly go from the mouse, an image is generated and it's sent off to the lab directly. So let's see how that works. As you can see here, it's a scan model. Now we're obviously using the Exocad software. Now we can see that those are the preps, and we can rotate the model, orient it in any which way we want. And just like we would trim the physical model, we have the facility to trim the digital model as well. So you can remove all the excess. So here you can see he's marking all the planes on which the trimming needs to be done. And he's just going to edit that. He's going to delete the excess bits that we don't need into our scan. Now I think in this case, he went a little bit further and he removed the first models as well. There we go. You can see he can turn it in many ways.
Okay.
And that's the pre-op and that's the prep. So he's alternating between both of them. And here, very interestingly, he is orienting the model on an articulator. Now, I found this very interesting because in the normal way, in the analog way, you would have to mount the models with all that plaster. But in this case, you just need to orient the models onto your articulator. Now, it's got a few types of articulators inbuilt into the software, which I will show you in a minute. But here you can see he is putting it exactly where it needs to be. It's a virtual articulator, and those are the types of articulators that you can use on the software itself. So depending upon what system you've got, the software will be able to utilize that articulator if it's got that module on it. So here are the models that have been articulated. And again, you can do all the movements. So front, back, anterior, posteriorly, left lateral excursion, right lateral excursion. And you can turn it whichever way you want. You can see how the teeth appear, whether you've got enough space, what's the guidance looking like. So that's the articulation in a little closer view. The interesting thing that I'm trying to show is that they've made a customized incision guidance table, and that's been made from the pre-op models so that when the final restorations are made, they're following the same guidance. It's not creating any interference. I thought it was fascinating to see that this can be done digitally as well. And in this view, you can see we're getting really close in, and he's marking in the finishing lines of the preps, taking his own time. This is an important step. So going along all the edges, making insertion points as he goes along the preps, so that basically the software knows where the finishing lines are. That's done on one side, and you can see it shows the tooth number as well, and do a similar thing on the other prep as well. You can move them around, I guess. Once you think that they're okay, your selection is finished. There we go. Those are the margins of the prep. Done the same thing on the other side. And those are the final margins of both the preps. I think he's got a bit of an undercut there, so he's going to try and get rid of that. And once he's done that, you open up the vast library of all the options that you can choose from for the design of the central incisors. Now, I think there are plenty to choose from, and each one is customizable as well. And I think herein lies the skill. How much you want to make it look natural, what effect that you want to give, what is the surface texture looking like, what is the age of the patient, so on and so forth. Of course, the shade will come only when you actually press or prepare the final restoration, but in this stage you can take your sweet time and make sure that the design is what it needs to be or how you would want it to be. And here you can see looking around really carefully and trying to enhance the texture, trying to enhance the line angles so that the light reflection is as similar as possible to the next door tooth. Playing around with the texture is a little bit as well. Again, viewing it from various angles so that you can see how it integrates with the rest of the dentition. Some more enhancements to be done, creating a little bit more surface texture, depending upon what the dentist is asked for. Looking at it from various angles, that's the emergence profile. Playing around with the texture a little bit more. I think it's a lot of fun doing this bit. You can get really creative. And there we go, that's the final, and that's the protrusion. Then you can do a left lateral movement. You can do a right lateral movement as well. It's basically replicating your incisor guidance table. So that's the final finished bit. And this is a complex case where you've got implants placed, and the dentist has then taken a scan, and those are the scan bodies in place. And we're going to design a virtual model on it. There we go, that's the completed design actually. And we're going to follow this case through. We're going to make prototypes, and we're also going to do the whole milling process. Can one do this as a dentist oneself? I think so. If you've got a keen interest in it, you can gather all the photographs, get some scans done, and if you've done wax-ups before, this might interest you as well. As you can see, there's a lot of creativity that gets put into it. So yeah, by all means, buy a subscription to Exocad. You can do all the virtual designs by yourself. In the analog world, you will need to actually physically lift these wax patterns, put screws on them. But in the digital world, you don't actually need to do that. You can just put on some virtual screws and you can 3D print this virtual model. Now, what if you want to add some more layered porcelain on this? So I observed Mohit do another case.
Yeah, this is the case. This is having the cutback patterns that we have made for the pressing of Emax. We will be micro layering these. So we have mounted them on the ring base. Now this will be 3D printed and then it will be pressed. in the lithium disilicate material.
That's our 3D printer. Printing is just finished. And you'll see in a minute the printed model. There we go. So we can see there are quite a few units in there. Some crowns, some veneers. There's quite a few units in there. And that's the finished product. It's been cleaned up and you can see a few angles. That's the printing done. That's a ready wax pattern. I've shown this in the previous video, how we do a pressing. So that's the investment material getting mixed and then it gets poured into the ring. Once it's set, it gets put into a furnace where the wax melts away. And then you put the Emax press ingot, you press a plunger and put it into a furnace. And in this furnace, it actually gets pressed. It goes to about 1000 degrees roughly. And that's your furnace opening. There we go. And now it's a case of waiting for this ring to cool down. And then you take some discs, you separate it out, and then you do some sandblasting. And once that's done, you put some staining and glazing as you want it to be. And there we go. That's the final fit of the crown. Now, if you haven't watched this video, it's there in the previous part. So we're going to look at the milling process now. These are the blanks, if you like. Now, these are in the blue phase. Lithium disilicate needs to be milled in the blue phase, which we also call as wet milling. And it is then crystallized in the furnace to get the final lithium disilicate glass stage. Here's another photo. And this is the milling process. As you can see, it's in its blue phase and there's a lot of water, and that's how the milling actually works. What about the bigger ones, bigger crown and bridge cases? So this is the blank from which we're going to make our prototype. So the blank gets put into the milling machine, and here the blank is getting milled into the shape that we want it to be. It takes quite a bit of time. It's supposed to be very, very accurate. So the dentist then tries the prototype on into the mouth, checks it for aesthetics, function, occlusion. This is the blank for the zirconia. So the zirconia is in a stage where it's softer, and in that soft stage it needs to be milled. We cannot mill the zirconia directly as it's very hard. So you take one of these blanks and basically mill them into how many ever units you want, whatever shape. Again, accuracy. It's very accurate. And you can see it's slowly milling it in layers. You can see a crown being milled there. And this is a larger case that has been milled. This is the pre-sintered phase, so you can see it looks the part. It looks so beautifully done, and it's replicating whatever we designed on the computer in the software in Exocad. And there we go. That's the final product. It's in its finished state. It's been into the furnace. So it's after sintering that we are seeing this product. This is obviously an implant supported bridge. I'm going to try it onto the model. So that's what the final product. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it of some use. If you do like the content, give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more future videos. Thank you.